Hello, and welcome to my detailed review and breakdown of the film Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. If you haven't seen the film yet, I would suggest you pause the video, go to a cinema, watch the film, then come back and then watch the rest of the video. Because if you do ever intend to see the film, it's good enough for you for it to deserve your honest and unbiased first impression of it. So do that first if you ever intend to see the film. Now that that's done, a little bit of housekeeping first, which is I have seen the film twice. The first time with friends, just watching it as a film, and the second time also in cinema, with the intent of reviewing it. So I made notes, I ordered them, we've got them here, printed out. So, yes. Another thing. I have not played D&D 5th edition. I have played Pathfinder a lot, both as a player and as a GM. And Pathfinder is basically D&D 3.5, only expanded a little bit. So, because of this, I have researched all of the rules-related stuff with 5th edition. So all of that has been researched. Now, there are going to be a lot of rule inaccuracies in this, and there is a very easy fix for all of them, and that is, it's homebrew. If you don't know what homebrew is, it's when, in this context, it's when when players use their own content they've made or that another user or player has made. So stuff that's not source material. It's basically a fancy word for modifying the rules. And that is something that a lot of GMs do, and that's something that I also do a lot. And that very simple fix pretty much fixes explains all of the rule inaccuracies. That doesn't mean that I won't mention them, because I think the majority of people who are going to watch the film are going to watch it because it's D&D. And people who know D&D, which I think is going to be a lot of people, for them, a large part of the fun will be to go through the film and say, oh, I know that spell, I know how that spell works, because I've memorized it because my player uses that spell, and I know exactly how that works. And so if the spell does something completely different in the film than it does in the game, then that is a bit frustrating and takes that part of the fun out of it, I think. At least a bit. So I will mention them, but just so you know, there is an easy fix for those. Right. So one of the things, a pretty big rule inaccuracy, is, and we'll get to the actual plot in a bit, don't worry, but one of the biggest rule inaccuracies is that the film doesn't use, as far as I know, doesn't use the Vancian magic system. Now, before we actually get into that, there's a very lovely view behind me. I'll just let you have a look at that for a moment there. Right, so the Vancian system Vancian magic system was created by Jack Vance, who was a fiction author, and he had, at least as I understand it, he had a problem where his characters who had magic could just use that magic all the time, and that meant that he had to come up with contrived reasons for why. Oh, there's a beetle on the ground. Hold on, 1 second. You should be able to see that beetle there. That is a really interesting... Or is that a wasp that's not got its wings yet? It might be a wasp, actually. Huh. I hope you were able to see that. Anyway, yeah. So his characters were just overpowered because of the magic, and they could use it all the time, and he had to come up with contrived reasons for why they don't use the magic all the time. So he came up with a system where if you were someone who has the ability to cast spells, then you have to prepare those spells. You have to actually set aside a bit of time and memorize that spell and put that spell into your mind, and then you could cast it. It was prepared. But if you cast it, then you took it from your mind and put it out into the world, and you would have forgotten it. You were no longer able to cast that specific spell. And so it is quite... Hold on, there's a bit of mud. 1 second. So it is quite a good system, because that means that magic suddenly becomes a resource that you have to manage. And it can't get you out of every situation because you've got a limited amount of it. Like, yes, you could use the magic for this thing, but maybe you'll need it later on. And this system, the Vancian magic system, is a huge part of Dungeons and Dragons, as any player who's played any sort of magic user could tell you. And in this film, they just, at least as far as I could tell, they just completely omitted it. In the film, if you can cast magic, then congratulations, you can do that thing, and it's as simple as that. Now, I get why they did that, because they wanted action scenes. They wanted action scenes where lots of spells are going off and all that stuff's happening, and if the characters are limited in their use of magic and have to use it strategically, then you can't have that, or not as easily. But there are workarounds. Like, for example, how about spell scrolls? You see, spell scrolls are spells that are stored in a scroll, and if you read the scroll, the spell goes off, and it doesn't consume one of your slots. So one of the main magic users in the film is very has very little confidence in his own magic abilities, and he thinks he's a really bad wizard, well, really bad sorcerer, sorry. And so it would make a whole lot of sense if he was just running around with a sack full of magic spell scrolls that he got from somewhere, from a dungeon or whatever, and he pulls us out, casts a spell, pulls one out, casts a spell, pulls one out, casts a spell. So you could have the same action sequences, only it would work better, because now, what if he suddenly runs out? He's got his last few scrolls. You've got a timer ticking. He's only got this many scrolls, and now he's run out, and his friends need him, and you could play that in two different ways. You could say, either he's going to suddenly find his confidence, and in this moment of need, he manages to come through and save the day with his own magic. Not with scrolls, but with his own magic. That's actually, there's some really nice flowers there you can see behind me. Anyway, his own magic. Or he doesn't. He because he was so reliant on the scrolls, he's not been practicing his own magic. And so he can't do that. And that could be a huge part of that could be an interesting part of his character arc. If you don't want to do that, you could just have a little acknowledgement of it. Like, for example, so in D&D, to prepare your spells, you need 1 hour of time, and you usually do that at the beginning of the day after a long rest, so that you've got the spells you want for a day. So you could have just said something like, so they're there at a camp, they set up camp, they're sleeping, it's the middle of the night, and then one of the characters wakes up, and you hear mumbling, and then he just turns over to the other side and says, why does he always have to prepare spells this early in the morning, or something like that? Because in D&D, because it takes an hour, oftentimes the players who need to prepare spells do that before dawn, because the group wants to set out at dawn. And that could have just been a nice way of acknowledging this, which they didn't do. Sorry, I need to open this door. 1 second. There we go. Sorry if that was a bit loud. I might quiet that down a bit for you. Now, just one more thing about this system. Just one little thing. before we move on, and that is that since you have to prepare spells, you've got to try to anticipate what you're going to need that day. So, for example, if you're trying to sneak into, I don't know, a big castle, and you're trying to steal something, or get someone out, for example, and you've got to get past guards and all that sort of stuff, then preparing a spell like Charm Person, for example, would be quite useful. However, if you expect to be going in a dungeon that following day, then preparing spells that are more oriented towards combat might be more useful, like I don't know, magic missile, magic missile. So that element just falls away completely if you don't use the Vancian magic system, or anything even remotely like it. So you could have had some interesting dynamics there, where you've prepared these spells, but you're suddenly in a completely different situation, and now you've got to be creative using the spells that you have prepared to get what you want, to mostly stay alive. But yeah, that's my rant done about the magic system. Although one thing I do want to mention is the CGI in this film and the effects look stunning. I mean, yeah, it looks stunning. Right, so let's actually get into the plot now. Actually, before we do, if you want to support these kind of videos or this kind of content, there are links where you can do so in the description. Just a little plug, but let's actually get started now. Right, everything's okay. I just quickly double-checked the map that I have with me, because I've got an actual physical Ordnance Survey map, and I don't fancy getting lost, even though this is a beautiful landscape to get lost in, especially in this time of year and with this weather, but minus those big towers there, but I don't really fancy getting lost. So check the map, everything's good. So let's actually get into the story. So we begin in a frozen tundra where there's a snowstorm happening, and there is a prisoner convoy heading to this huge tower, this edifice of enormous proportions that is a prison. And we quickly meet our two main characters, and they are prisoners, and that's perfectly spot on D&D campaign start. You're in a prison, you've got to escape, you've got to get out, you've got to start the adventure. And so we meet them, and then there's a scene where they're outside using tools to hack apart ice blocks. And one of the main characters, played by Chris Pine, Edgin, he starts singing, and he's quickly shut up by a guard. And at first I thought, well, actually, hold on, if the work actually goes better if you sing, and I know it's a prison, so I'm not really supposed to have fun, but then I noticed, actually this was my second time watching, when I knew that his character class is a bard, who, if you didn't know, do magic through performances, often through song and dance. So the guard probably knows that, which means him trying to shut up the bard is probably just him also trying to stop him from casting magic. So I think that was a really nice touch. Also, is it just me, or does that whole tower ice prison thing kind of remind anyone else of Rurapente from Star Trek 6? Because Rurapente is another prison that's out in the cold somewhere, and it was built there partly because of valuable resources, but it looks like in D&D, it looks like it's just ice that they're hacking away, not anything valuable that's there. And the other part was because if you've got prisoners escaping, then if it's out in the frozen tundra somewhere, the environment will probably kill them before they get anywhere near civilization. That's also the reason why Dartmoor Prison, which is actually over there in Dartmoor, you can't see it now, but Dartmoor's over there, quite a ways over there. I can actually see it through the trees, but yeah, that's got a prison. And it's built in the middle of Dartmoor because Dartmoor is, and in the past even more so, was a treacherous place where people who were not accustomed to it would likely die if they tried to cross it, especially without proper gear that a prisoner escaping wouldn't have. So that's great. That's great. I like that a lot. Right. Then we get to a thing called the Absolution Council, which appears to be this annual thing where prisoners get a chance to earn a pardon and to be released early from prison. So they go there, and Edgin starts to exposit his backstory, and it's done through flashbacks, which in a normal fantasy film I would not be a huge fan of, because I want to see who the character is and then find out bits about his backstory as the film goes on. Hold on. Yeah. And I think just saying, okay, here's his backstory, this is what happened, he did that and that and that and that and that and that and that, and here we are now, is a little lazy, maybe. But in the context of a D&D film, which this is, it works perfectly. Because that's pretty much exactly how D&D games often work, especially a new campaign. The players have just made their characters, and the GM gives them this opportunity to tell each other, the other players, not the characters, the other players, about their own backstory that they came up with. And so expositing to the council, expositing to the other players, is a great way of doing that. And it works perfectly. Well, almost perfectly. Because, one second. There we go. I say almost perfectly because I thought, the first time watching, I'm curious about what you thought when you watched this the first time. I thought Edgin is lying. I thought, because he clearly has an alternative plan. Because, hold on one second. There we go. Because he is clearly relying on this one judge, Jonathan, to be there to get out. And so he tells this story, this sob story of his family where his wife got killed, and then his baby, and then he got this one chance to get this artifact from this dungeon which could save her, resurrect her, to reunite his family, and he, in trying to do so, in trying to steal that for love, he was captured and imprisoned in this terrible place. And I thought he was lying, basically. As it turns out later in the film, of course. I would give a spoiler warning, but I gave the spoiler warning at the beginning of the film. As it turns out, of course, he's not lying. He's telling the almost complete truth. There's one little bit he omitted, but yeah. So that scene didn't really make me care about the character much. I was excited to see, what is he actually playing? What's he actually gonna do? But yeah, I thought he was lying. So then the judges, as he finishes his story, the judges either already stamp or about to stamp their verdict onto the paper. And he says, wait, just as Jonathan comes in. And as soon as we see Jonathan with those big wings, he's a bird, humanoid. I think he might be an old style, like first D&D, second edition D&D Kenku with wings. Might be something different, I don't know. I immediately knew, with that big round window, yeah. They grab him, throw themselves out the window to escape. And then, of course, I mean, it was very clearly timed so that the judges couldn't speak their verdict. So, yeah, clearly the verdict was that the pardon was granted, even though the characters don't hear that. They've already jumped out the window. Also, little thing I noticed is that the sealing wax, which is used on the stamp, is green because they accept the pardon. Later in the film, there's another Absolution Council, and there it's red because they deny it. So that's a nice little detail. Let me just make sure I didn't skip over anything. Oh, right. Yeah, one thing. In the flashback, where they're about to steal... Well, where they're in the process of stealing the Tablet of Awakening, or whatever it's called. The thing that allows his wife to be resurrected, or would allow his wife to be resurrected. There are some cobwebs on it. And as he takes it, and as he moves it further away, this one little silver thread breaks, and the alarm goes off, and all that sort of stuff happens. And I'm curious, do you think that that is the alarm spell? Because the alarm spell uses a fine silver wire to activate, well, to set up. Might be a little bit of modification of an alarm spell, but that only lasts for 8 hours. So does someone constantly go in there and reactivate that spell? Or maybe they've cast permanency on it, because permanency makes a spell permanent, of course. And alarm is actually one in the listed spells for permanency. So there's an insect on my notes. I was trying to read them, but no, it has to watch the video. Right, so let's see. Already talked about that. Yeah, so one thing is, for the entire intro, like the entire, I don't know, first act, or however you want to, basically up until all the characters are together, it kind of feels like they wrote that bit last, because first time watching, that in this entire intro bit doesn't make me care about the characters. And this is a thing that the film kind of does quite a bit. The second time watching the film, when I already know the characters, yeah, I already know the characters. I already either care about them or know that I won't care about them. And that, in that regard, the first part of the film works a bit better. But I'm curious, what did you think? I mean, another part of that might be I thought he was lying, so I didn't take his backstory seriously or at face value. Right. One second, need to switch hands. So the next bit is they've just jumped out the window, and Jonathan manages to break their fall, and actually I am going to walk through this bit in silence because there's some cattle on that hill and I don't want to disturb them. So I'll get back to you once I've crossed through this field. 1 second. Remind me where I was. Okay, so slight change of plan, because as I approached the gate, they also approached the gate. So they're very curious as to what I'm doing in their field, and I can't really get through there. So it's time for a bit of a detour. I've got to head back down that way along the road, and then where the road crosses, well, basically where this little intersection, I've got to go on a little bit further and then head left and then cross over, and then it'll join back up over there somewhere. So let's do that. Right, now where was I? Oh right, yeah, they've just escaped. So they've just escaped and they are now out in the frozen tundra with, yes, admittedly, a little bit of cold weather gear, but only the stuff that they had on inside the prison tower. So I was looking forward to seeing them get through this harsh landscape and overcoming hardships, and where we get to actually see the characters being the characters, and we actually get to see their relationship together and who they are and how they handle adversity. Because again, prison tower built in a really cold place because the environment is likely to kill any escapee. So, yeah, no, pretty much. Basically, yeah, just no. It doesn't happen, that's the thing. They've gotten out, yeah, great. Little montage of at most 30 seconds of them walking through tundra, and then they go and they find steal some horses from a little nomadic tent thing that's there, and then they arrive at Edgin's old hometown where he lived in the flashback. That's it. If you skip the travel, I'm not going to feel immersed in the world. I mean, part of watching a fantasy film is that I want to be immersed in the world. I want to see the wonders. I want to feel like what it would be to actually walk the paths there, to see the mountains and the hills, to feel the air, to experience it, to really just be there. It's a bird of prey up there. I'm not sure if you can actually see that. Hold on. No, that's not. Don't think that's visible. Somewhere up there's a bird of prey. Anyway. Oh, by the way, you can actually see Dartmoor now. So you can see those hills in the background there, just above my head, pretty much. Yeah, that's Dartmoor. I heard it has a prison somewhere, or had a prison. I'm not sure if it's still active. Anyway. So, yeah. They skipped the travel. And I know that the film has a lot of plot to get through, like any D&D game has. Well, most D&D games have. But come on, this is in the beginning. This is where you should be pulling me into the world, and you're just not. It's like I get to have a glimpse of it behind glass. I don't get to actually feel it. Anyway. Also, actually, one good thing. Oh, there's a traveler coming the other way. One good thing is I'll continue talking once he's by. 1 second. Right, so I've just had a lovely chat with that man. He was going to go to Totnes, the same as I am, and I managed to warn him about the cattle. So he's off. That's an interesting sound coming from the grass. Anyway, he's off walking the same way that I'm going to walk, which is a little detour. So it's good that I have a map with me. Right, so let's actually before we continue, where was I? Oh, right, yes, the map. So they're traveling, and one good thing about the travel is it is actually set in Faerun, in the Sword Coast, in the Forgotten Realms. And they show a beautiful rendition of the map, and they show where we start. We start off here, and then we move south this way. I don't think they say specifically where his village is, but it's somewhere down here. And then there's a tavern scene where they're trying to find Forge, who's a previous party member who he entrusted his daughter to just as he was being captured in the flashback. So, and Forge has also got the tablet, by the way. That's an important bit I should mention. So they're trying to find where Forge is, and they have no idea. So they're talking about maybe heading down to Baldur's Gate and then heading north, which on the map is all the way down here. But then they just happen to see a flyer with inviting them to some sort of arena game or something with Forge's winking face on it. And apparently he's now the Lord of Neverwinter. Neverwinter, of course, is a very prominent place on the Sword Coast from the D&D setting, and yeah, good. That's good. I like that they kept it in that setting and that they put references in and they actually use the setting. I just wish I could see it more. Come on, don't skip the travel. Anyway, okay, actually, yeah, they, speaking of skipping the travel, just on my notes, and maybe you can see that. No, those are spoilers down there. You can see there. Oh, that's maybe mirrored. So Journey to Never, it says Journey to Neverwinter. More travel skipped, literally only 15 seconds. Frowny face. Yeah, so going from all the way up here, which is probably up here somewhere because it's still a bit snowy when they're up here, down to Neverwinter. Yes, I know it's called Neverwinter because it's pretty much Neverwinter there, but yeah, who knew? 1 second. Anyway, hold on, there's a little awkward. 1 second, I need to quickly put this in this hand because I kind of need this hand here to be able to open the gate. There's another car, 1 second. It's only 15 seconds. The entire travel from, so combined, the travel from all the way up here, going all the way down to Neverwinter, is literally only about 45 seconds, maybe a minute. I haven't exactly timed the bit from when they escape to when they go down to this village, Edgin's old village. However, I have timed the bit from here to Neverwinter, and that's literally only 15 seconds. Right, then we get to Neverwinter, and Neverwinter is rendered beautifully. It's got the palace, it's by the coast, it's got the walls, it's great. I did, however, notice that the chasm is missing, and so I looked up when the film is set, because, well, I looked up the history of Neverwinter, and I saw that the chasm, which had been formed by the volcanic activities, I think, had been magically sealed a few years before. Well, I say a few years. I think it was something like a decade or something. I don't know. You can look it up yourself if you want to. Anyway, it was sealed before the film is set, magically. So I think that probably explains why the chasm isn't there, because they would have probably included it, because they did actually render Neverwinter quite beautifully. So that's the thing I noticed. Oh, actually, I've got the numbers right here. Sorry, I've forgotten that I'd written the numbers down. So the film takes place in the late 1490s DR, and the chasm was sealed in 1484 DR. Let me just let that car pass. There we go. So yeah, that's good. Right. So then they meet Kira, Edgin's daughter, who by the way, at this point is like maybe 12 years old-ish, maybe 13, around there, I would guess. And he hasn't seen her for 2 years. And this is after that, what was supposed to be a heartwarming flashback explaining the tragedy of his backstory. And that's why they escaped, to get back to her. He made these mittens. Hold on, there's a car coming. 1 second. That's okay. Actually, I'm going to walk on this side of the road because that way, in this curve, cars can actually see where I am a bit sooner. So it's a bit safer. Anyway, yeah, so he hasn't seen her for this long. And in prison, there's a scene about him making gloves, but actually making them into mittens for her. So, I'm going to let that other car pass as well. Right. So, There is... I've got it written in a bit of a different order down here in my notes, but actually a different order would be better. So, Edgin's dialogue with his daughter does not feel like a father who's seeing his young daughter for the first time in 2 years after being imprisoned in that tower in the frozen north. It doesn't feel like it, and not at all. So what we get is basically, here, have these mittens. That's a paraphrase. He gives her the mittens. She doesn't know what they are, and then, anyway, gives mittens. And the dialogue we get is, and I quote, "I want you to know, I am so sorry for how things turned out. I took a risk and it didn't pay off." Pause. "Why do you look mad at me?" That's the dialogue we get from Edgin. So, and by the way, so the way the scene plays out is they're waiting for ages in this corridor somewhere in the palace castle thing. And they've been waiting for ages for her to come. Then she comes, Kira comes, and there's a bit of a pause. They're just standing around for a moment. And then Kira runs over and runs past her dad and embraces Holger. Okay, and then we get the dialogue. Come on! Seriously? That's the dialogue? Anyway, so, I mean, what I would have expected, is, as soon as he sees her, well, firstly, before, so as they're waiting, they're just sitting there waiting, I would have expected him to maybe be pacing up and down, or something like that. Okay, sitting's fine, okay. At least I think he was sitting. If he was actually pacing up and down, I'm sorry, but I think he was sitting. Anyway. And then as soon as he sees her, I would have had him run to her and pick her up and embrace her and hold her tight like he's never going to let her go again. That is how I would expect a father of a young girl to act when he sees her for the first time after 2 years. Instead, we get what I just said. We get, "I want you to know I'm sorry for how things turned out. I took a risk and it didn't pay off. Why do you look mad at me?" Also, we are getting close to where the path diverges, and then we won't be on the road anymore. Airplane. Anyway, so, then we see, well, she mentions that she's still got the magic pendant that we saw in the... Hold on, let me just... I'll pause the video for a second until the plane's gone, and then I'll talk a bit more without the background noise. 1 second. Okay, so the plane's gone. Well, it's probably moved somewhere. It's probably not gone, but it's moved somewhere. So, let's continue. And I promise, I do actually think that this is a good film. I promise. The reason why I'm criticizing these things so much is because I do actually care about it. Yeah. So, I just want to make that point clear. Now, I think that this is the way we're supposed to go. Hold on, let me just quickly check the... Actually, hold on. There's a sign there. Public bridleway. Bridleway, sorry. Up there, public bridleway. Yeah, so this is the way we're supposed to go. Ha! Yeah, those cows. Now they're back on the field as though nothing happened. Up there. Anyway. So, oh yes, the pendant. In the flashback, and during the Absolution, during the pardon trial thing, in the flashback, it's shown that Holger, some of the stuff that they stole, Holger gave Kira a pendant, a necklace pendant, which makes her invisible. And so she says, so they meet, she says, and I quote, "I use it to sneak around the castle sometimes." And in my opinion, that is never paid off. That feels like it's obviously set up for something to be done with. Like, I don't know, they could maybe, because it's clearly shown from before in the flashback that she was part of the team. So maybe it could be that she sneaks around the castle with it to try to find out some sort of secret code or some sort of solution to a puzzle, or to overhear someone talking, or to do anything. But that's never paid off. Yes, the pendant comes up once at the end of the film, and I'll save my opinions about that till we get there. But I use it to sneak around the castle sometimes. It's never paid off. Maybe that was a little bit of leftover dialogue from before, I don't know. It feels like it. So then... then they meet with Forge, who is as insufferable as he is supposed to be. He's a rogue, his class. Well, that wasn't meant to be linked that way, but he's a rogue and also he's insufferable. Those are not necessarily linked that way. There's no correlation. There's not necessarily a correlation there. Anyway, so they meet with him, and it very quickly becomes clear that he is not going to give them the Tablet of Awakening, and he's also not going to give Edgin his daughter Kira back, because he's been poisoning her mind. So, I mean that with words, probably nothing else. Yeah, probably nothing else. Because he says that having a child makes him feel like a god. One of the lines, which I am going to hopefully quote, I've not got it written down, but I think I remember it, is, he says, "Oh, hold on, I'm a lord and a god. I really am doing well, aren't I?" I think that's a quote. Don't quote me on it. There are people coming, so I will quickly pause until they've passed, and then I'll resume talking about this. 1 second. Right, so we're back. And it was lovely. I had a little chat with those two ladies. Apparently they're from Berry Pomeroy. And yeah, they were happy about a lovely day. So, there's a plane up there. Oh, and there's another bird of prey up there. Anyway, so, yeah, so they talk with him. It's clear that he isn't going to give them back. And the Kira was in the scene in the beginning. And you say, "Well, I'm sorry about the," and then Kira says something about, she mentions about him leaving her for the Tablet of Riches, and so that's how we find out that actually Forge has been lying to her. And then Edgin tries to convince her, no, it was the Tablet of Awakening. I was trying to bring your mum back, and the reason I didn't tell you was because I didn't, in case we didn't succeed, I didn't want your part to be broken, or something like that. But he does a not great job of it, because Kira doesn't believe him. She leaves, and then they both completely and utterly fail at diplomatizing with Forge, and they try to fight, but then Safina, who's the wizard lady, who... Oh, there's not a lake on this map. Anyway, she's the one who gave them the... Actually, is this a good way to get through? Maybe the other side would be better. I think the other side's better. Yeah, I can't get through there. 1 second. I'll get through this first and then I'll continue talking. Okay, I've just gotten past that. Yeah, this side was much easier than the other side. At least with the shoes I'm wearing, which is sandals. Don't worry, my feet aren't wet, it's fine. No, I said don't worry about it. Anyway, so yeah, they completely fail at that. And it gets to the point where, they try to initiate combat, but Safina traps them, and the bard completely fails diplomacy. The rogue out-rhetorics the bard. Anyway, what happens next is, Forge orders them to be returned to prison and to collect the bounty, but Safina apparently wants them dead. So she orders her guards to kill them. So, oh right, actually, the Lord Neverember's name is dropped, which is good continuity, because he's actually a canon character of the setting. Oh, this is so beautiful. Hold on, if I just turn this way, so you can actually see where I'm going. Let's just look at that beautiful path there, with those trees and a little bit of shade and the bluebells down there. Oh, I could not have picked a better day for this. Anyway, so Lord Neverember's name is dropped, which is good, because he's a character from continuity, so I was happy about that. Even though, again, I've not played here specifically in the Forgotten Realms, because I've not played 5e, but I know of the character, and so I was happy about that. Okay, so a fight ensues with the guards, where they're trying to execute both of them, Holger and Edgin. And Holger pretty much single-handedly defeats all of them. Reasonable, as a D&D game. She gets her axe from one of the guards, and she's very concerned that he was only oiling it twice a month instead of weekly. There's a reason why I'm pointing that out now. We'll get to it later. Edgin's hands are tied, and throughout the fight, he doesn't give any sort of support. He's a bard, that's his class. He's got magic that is specifically designed to support, like inspire courage. I think that's a thing still in 5e. I haven't checked this up. I haven't researched this. So he doesn't contribute in the fight at all. No magic, not even a healing spell afterwards. That was a little bit the thing. And so I'm going to give you a spoiler. I'm going to spoiler the review. Edgin never uses a single spell or class ability in the entire film. Not one. He might as well not even have a class. Why? He's supposed to be your main character. Anyway, that's probably too big of a rant to get into. So, now we get to a nice little thing, which is, this might have been before, I'm not exactly sure on the chronology here, but as they're in Neverwinter, they go past this little back alley thing, and on a little beam from the top, across the alley, we can see two baby rust monsters squabbling over a little bit of scrap metal. And that was really cute, and a good bit of continuity that's not drawn attention to. It's just there in the background, just to immerse you in the world, and that was great. If you didn't know, rust monsters basically eat metals. And it was cute, it was good, but isn't it a bit of a big issue? Because the rust monsters I know, so they've got two antennae, and if the antennae hit something, they attack with them. If they hit anything made of metal, whether that is your armor or your weapon or anything else made of metal, then it deals half of the weapon or the item's hit points as damage, and it gives it the broken condition. And then if they hit it again, it's destroyed. Completely destroyed. The item is gone. Doesn't it seem like a bit of an issue to you? Hold on, I'll change hands because my arm is getting a little tired. 1 second. Does it not seem like a little bit of a huge issue to have rust monsters loose in your city? Maybe it's not an issue. Maybe there's some explanation for it. But see, that seems like the sort of thing that if I were GMing, I might give that little bit of a plot hook, where it's like, oh, and there, yeah, there's some rust monsters fighting over a little bit of scrap over there. And if the players are interested, they think, wait, rust monsters? What are rust monsters doing in a city? That's dangerous. Then that might be a story to continue. But in this film, the players completely ignored it. They probably didn't even notice it. The character certainly didn't. So yeah, that's a spot-on D&D thing. Even though I think in this particular case, it's probably not intentional. One second, so we've got that. Yes, then we finally get a travel scene with some actually good dialogue, where we just see them riding along at a slow pace through the countryside, trying to figure out what to do now. And I loved that. That was great. I'm so happy that we finally got a travel scene that wasn't completely skipped. That made me happy. Now I've got to turn the page, so I've got to put the camera down for 1 second. So 1 moment. Just put that down on that little mossy log there. 1 second. Yeah, this is a great view. I know. Actually, I'll just put it down sort of there. That's good. So I've got to turn the page. Okay. I'll grab it with the other arm. 1 second. With the other hand, even. 1 moment. I hope that the audio is fine. Right, so then we get to meet Simon, who's the sorcerer from Edgin's backstory, flashback thing. And so it's actually, we get a nice bit of continuity there later, so when he's already joined the party in a few minutes, with these big bird creatures. They look like some sort of terror birds-ish. And those appear in the background in a few scenes, and that's a nice bit of world-building continuity that I really enjoyed. We get, actually, hold on, I didn't put this down in my notes, but I do actually want to quickly talk about this. So, him joining the group and already being in the backstory, that's great. In my headcanon of this actually being a game of D&D is that the player playing Simon, hold on 1 second, I've got to fix this one moment. There we go. The player playing Simon couldn't make it for the first few sessions, and so he wasn't in the prison cell with them. And then later on, of course, he joins the group again, and they have adventures. Which is even, I mean, that even makes more sense, because back when they were still talking with Forge, they were saying, oh, you wanted us to get caught. And then he says, well, actually, I wanted you and Simon to get caught, but Simon somehow escaped. And that would be a nice little kind of clue that actually Simon was supposed to be in the prison cell, but the player couldn't make it the first few sessions, and so he ended up being free and they met up later. So that's just headcanon. Anyway, we get more travel scenes with them talking, just walking through a field, just talking, like talking through while walking through the countryside is nice, don't you think? And then they say that we need a druid to wild shape to get into the castle because they want to find treasure to pay the people helping them to get the tablet and Kira out. So, because of course the tablet is probably also with the treasure they'd be getting. So they want to get treasure out of Forge's castle in Neverwinter. So they want a druid. And then one of them says, I happen to know one. And that works great in a D&D context because, well, stuff like that happens. They want to get another player in, new player in, and a druid, and say, well, we've already got a little bit of backstory. It's like, oh yeah, my character, well, we could have maybe been dating, but it didn't work out, okay. And then you got to rejoin the group, and then we'll have fun role-play moments. And yeah, so that works great. Then Holger, when Edgin is talking about what kind of animals the druid could wild shape in, hold on, just looking at that pile of rocks there, I was wondering, is that pile of rocks part of an old wall? Why is that there? I wonder. Might be something worth investigating at some point, but I'm not going to do that because I don't have the time. Anyway, so they're talking about what kind of animals a druid could morph into, could wild shape into for this to work, and then Holger suggests a deer. And that is kind of obvious setup for a joke or something. I mean, if a character like that, I mean, this film isn't exactly subtle. So if a character mentions, oh yeah, she could turn into a deer, which is ridiculous when you want to infiltrate a castle, you can be pretty sure that that's going to happen and it's going to pay off. So that's quite obvious, but it could pay off. Then we meet Doric. Doric is the druid, and so here we get to a pretty obvious thing, which I would assume a lot of other reviewers who are at all familiar with D&D would probably point out as well, and that is that druids can only wild shape into beasts, basically animals, just normal animals. And which kind of beasts they can they can shapeshift into, wild shape into, is very restricted in terms of abilities. So when you first get the ability at second level, you can't. You can only wild shape into beasts that have at most 1/4 CR, so challenge rating, and they can't have any sort of fly or swim speed. So yeah, only beasts. Doric, she's a horse, first of all, so she's going to be pretty high level, and then she changes to an owlbear. Now, an owlbear, and yes, I looked this up on the D&D 5e monster manual online, and an owlbear is a large monstrosity. Not a beast, a monstrosity. Because it's not just a normal animal, it was created, probably created magically by a wizard or something and then got released. So she can't change into that according to the rules, but could be homebrew, could easily be homebrew. 1 second, I need to quickly check something. Is that good? Yes, good. So, then they follow her, and they somehow get all the way into the Emerald Enclave treetops without being stopped before. They just kind of wander up there. Okay. And then they speak with her. She confronts them and says, who are you? And I was just rolling my eyes because so she and Simon were dating in the past. Didn't work out. And she doesn't recognize him. And he says, I'm Simon, sorcerer. And has no idea who he's talking about. And then who he is. And then he says, I'm the guy you said that I made you sad. Not because of anything I did, but just because of who I am, basically. I might be paraphrasing that slightly. I didn't write that quote down. So this is really lovely. Sorry. I know I'm getting into this, but I am actually also paying attention to the world around me. So want you to appreciate that moment for a bit. Anyway, so, and then when he says that, and here we are back on the actual footpath. So if the cows hadn't been in the way, you can see there is the signpost up there. We would have come from over there, but that is not where we came from, because we came from back there. And so now we're going to head that way. So I'm going to just give you a little view of that. We're going to head down that way. So, yeah, I was just rolling my eyes at that, because that's what gets her to remember him, how pathetic he is. Basically, yeah, I did not enjoy it. You might have enjoyed that. If you did, that's fine. I personally didn't, but Right. Then they're talking about the plan, and they're talking about how they need a druid to shapeshift into some animal, like a mouse or something, to go into the fortress castle so that they can steal the stuff. To basically, they say they need her, and then Holger again says, so actually Edgin says, yeah, a mouse, and then Holger says, or a deer. At this point, yeah, okay, film, I get it. You're setting up a joke about a deer. She's going to need to transform into a deer that's actually going to be useful, even though you wouldn't think it's going to be useful, and that's going to be the joke. I know, you've already foreshadowed this. You've already set this up. But they try to set it up again. And then we get a whole back and forth about Edgin's role in the party, which is ironic, considering that he basically doesn't have a class. But anyway, and then he says he's the planner, and then goes back and forth and says, well, you've already made the plan, why do we need you? And says, well, if the first plan fails, I'll make another plan. And then she says, you make plans that fail. And then goes back and forth, and he also plays the lute, and that was spot on D&D role-playing, with players just having fun. And I've personally role-played countless situations like that, where the dialogue basically went exactly like that. I really enjoyed that. So, especially with characters that are just meeting for the first time. So then actually, I'm going to pause the recording just in case something corrupts or something. I don't want to lose everything, so we'll be back in a moment. Right, we're back. And, water. There's water down there. I hope you can see it. It's just down there. Anyway, right, then we meet Zastam. I hope that's how it's pronounced. It's S-Z-A-S-S space T-A-M. Now he, and I researched this, he's the political leader of Fae, which is a land far, far, far to the east. And he's also the head of the Red Wizards. He's also a lich. If you don't know what a lich is, it's basically a undead body that is still being possessed by the consciousness of that individual, and it's held together with magic, and it has kind of... Actually, hold on. We're going over this little bridge, and I want to quickly show you this because this is a beautiful scene. So, just look at that little stream coming down from over there, and then goes underneath us, underneath our feet, and it literally just crosses the road, like right there, and then goes off in that direction. I hope it looks beautiful on camera, because in real life, with depth perception, this is beautiful. Also, there's some really big trees over here, so I'm really happy about that. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yes, Zastam. Zastam. Yeah, he's also the leader of the... Yeah, so basically, a lich. I don't need to explain further about a lich. You already know what you need to know. It doesn't really come up. So, he gets introduced with Safina having a secret conversation with him about their dastardly plans, and it's revealed that she is a Red Wizard. And we know that the Red Wizards are the ones who killed Edgin's wife. So, of course, that's in part of the story, the backstory. So, that works. And then, yeah, the Red Wizard lore seems to have been treated with respect, except that they aren't really shown as being political leaders of a large and powerful country. They're basically just shown to be fantasy villains, monstrous fantasy villains, essentially. But you could interpret that in different ways. Right, so then, first attempt at getting the treasure and the tablet. So they're now all together, and actually, no, they're not, sorry. That's a little, because the way the scene is set up is that we continue in the castle with Safina and Forge, where They've just had a chat after we met Sastam, and there's a little fly that he kind of swats away. And that was really good hinting, foreshadowing of the plan of sneaking into the castle using wild shape is already underway. Now, a little bit of what might be an issue, we don't exactly know the timeline, is that a druid can only wild shape twice in a day. So she was already a horse, and then she changed into an owlbear. So now her changing into a fly, because that's what it is, it's her, doesn't really make sense if it's the same day, if you're keeping with the rules, unless there's more homebrew. Right, so he swats away the fly, and that's good foreshadowing, like, because I immediately thought, huh, there's a fly there, odd. Is that, it's already underway. She's already there, wild shape. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. It kept it subtle, that was good. But then we follow them down to the vault chamber where they're showing wealthy people who are coming to the games that Forge is starting up again, showing them the vault and how it's protected, to ensure them that it is actually protected. And then all that beautiful subtlety that I was just praising the film for goes completely out the window, because the fly is there again, and it is the focus of the scene. It's in the foreground, in the focus. It lands right there, watching, turns to watch them. It's like, yes, I get it. I know. I know. Your subtlety was working so well. Don't ruin it. Anyway. So then, of course, Safina, being a powerful red wizard who's already 300 years old, as we find out later. That's just an estimate, I think. She notices the wild shape, and this actually great action scene ensues. As an action scene, it's great. It does creative use for the wild shape changing, where she changes into a rat and then crawls into the suit of armor and then transforms back into her humanoid, tiefling shape, and then it transforms into an eagle, and then turns all this stuff to escape. And that's a good action scene, except, of course, druids can only wild shape twice. That, of course, in this film, as I talked about before, if you've got magic, there's no limit to the magic that you can do if you've got that bit of magic. So she can just wild shape however many times she wants. And also she has to be at least 8th level, because at 8th level, that's where you get to transform into a flying creature. So she has to be at least 8th level, if that is part of what they're keeping attention to. Anyway, so then she escapes on the street. More of those birds shows up. She tries to transform into one of those, but she's found out. And then, trying to outrun the horses, on the escape, she transforms into, I'll give you a few seconds, a deer. She transforms into a deer and runs away. And that, yeah, okay, it paid off. Yeah, good. So yeah, that was actually a good joke. It would have been better if Holger had only said it once in the beginning, and then it pays off. She actually transforms into a deer. But it would have been even better if just now, because there's a scene change where they're in the tavern talking about this. If Holger, so Holger says, so we just see her transform into a deer, Getaway. Holger says, and I quote, "So she did become a deer." Don't explain the joke. Come on. Come on. You had a funny joke. Don't explain it. You set it up twice, making it painfully obvious. Then you do it. And then you explain us that you did the joke. That's not... Yeah, anyway. Yeah, just show her transforming into a deer, getting away. And leave it at that. Don't bring it up again. We already got the joke. So... Right. Then they find out, well, they're talking about this seal, this magic seal being on the vault, and them not being able to get in there, because Simon says it's unbreakable. I mean, I could get through it if I were a really powerful sorcerer, or if we had the Helm of Disjunction. And the Helm of Disjunction, it's this artifact and blah, 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 that could disenchant the whole thing. Yeah, they need this artifact. And in a normal fantasy film, I would say that's a bit lazy writing. The characters are stuck and they just happen to know a way to get through. They happen to know of this artifact, and then Holger happens to know that where it might be found. But in a context of a D&D game, it makes perfect sense. Because in D&D, you've got knowledge checks. Basically, your character has a skill of, for example, knowledge history, and then you roll a die, you add that number together, and if those two numbers added together beat a certain number, then your character might just happen to know something about this topic. And these knowledge checks are used often, and it pretty much works out exactly like this. A player is stuck, they have no idea, let's just roll some knowledge checks, and oh, we happen to know this bit of information, now we can make a plan. And so I really enjoyed that. That was great. The only thing is about that scene, they refer to magic as magic, like specifically arcane magic, even though in the lore of the Forgotten Realms of Faerun, magic, specifically arcane magic, is referred to as the art, as opposed to divine magic, which is prayer. So I get that they wanted to make it clear that you're talking about magic here, and that would just be a nitpick. It's not a complaint. It's just something I noticed and wanted to share with you. Right, then we get to meet Marlamin, and I loved this. This bit I loved because so firstly, the plan is, sorry, I should go back. The plan is to go find this ancient battlefield where Holger's tribe, the Elk tribe, hundreds of years ago fought the dragon cult, which is a good lore reference, for control over the Helm of Disjunction. And some of the corpses there might still know what happened to the helm. So Simon's got a spell from a paladin cleric spell token, which allows him to cast a cleric spell, which I don't know the rules of that. I didn't research that, but okay. And so that's the plan. They're supposed to go there. But on the way there, actually showing us some travel, they go stop by to meet Holger's ex-husband, which is Marlamin. And that's she was in love with him, but her tribe was against that, and so she got exiled from her tribe to go be with Marlamin, but then she couldn't let that go, and then he left her, and yeah, so they travel and they find this beautiful little village, and this is not a plot-centric thing. There's just a little bit of a character's backstory, a little bit of exploring the world, and I love that. So then they go there, and Marlamin isn't a fool. He's not a clumsy fool like a lot of the other specifically male main characters of this film often tend to be. Marlamin is just a good, honest guy who tried to make things work with Holger, but it didn't work out. So then his new wife, Gwyn, walks in, and she is also just a good, kind woman. She finds her husband alone at home with his ex-wife. And what does she do? Does she get jealous? Does she get suspicious, untrustworthy? No, of course not. She says, good to meet you. I've heard lots about you. And then she turns and says, what are we having for dinner? And then she leaves the room and leaves the two alone. That's how people work. Great. Thank you, film, for not making this a drama. Thank you, film, for actually making these people likable. So yeah, so Holger finds a bit of closure. She takes a walking stick, which she left with him. And then she does say, so as they're leaving, she says to Edgin, sorry, I'll move on. Yeah, bird, okay, I'm moving on. Yeah, so she says to Edgin about, she says, and I quote, so she's going to do that, to show Marlamin and the Elk tribe they were fools to let me go. Okay, so maybe she's not quite over it, but that's fine. That's fine. Closure takes time. And then Edgin then uses music to soothe his friend's pain, and they sing together as they ride off. And I love that scene because he's a bard and he's her friend, and it's this little thing that we already had a little glimpse of over by the tower, or the prison tower, when they were breaking the ice. So that's really nice. I really like that. Also, we do have lovely scenery over there. This valley that we were walking along. I'll just quickly show you where we're going. We're just going back there. So, yeah. Anyway, this whole scene, these scenes where they go meet Marlamin, and they have that basically from where they first enter the scene to then go meet Marlamin and when they leave. These were the first scenes in the entire film that actually made me care about these characters. It wasn't them being imprisoned, it wasn't him being reunited with his daughter only to be torn away, it wasn't meeting the other characters, it wasn't them trying to steal stuff, no. It was this scene. Just them saying hello to an old acquaintance and then moving on. This was the scene that made me care. Yeah, I think this film has some writing issues. Although maybe I'm just used to a different kind of film and different kind of storytelling from older films. Please let me know what you think about this. I need to quickly flip the page, so I'll be with you in a moment. Right, I flipped the page. And so then we get to the burial ground scene. Remember I said they wanted to ask some corpses some questions? Yeah, well, there's the bit. So, I don't actually have, on the notes here, usually I have they skip travel again, but this time they actually didn't. They had the Marlamin bit, which, great. So, they get to this burial ground, this sacred burial ground, at night, to go dig up some corpses and ask them some questions. Why are they doing that at night? I mean, I get that from a cinematic point of view, it makes sense to have these creepy things happen at night, but I can tell you for 100% certainty that if in my game of D&D, my players would not do that. They'd get there, I'd explain, okay, you're getting close to the burial ground just as night is about to fall. Say, stop, no, okay, we're gonna rest here, and then we're gonna go there in the morning. Because my players know what lurks in the night. Anyway, yeah, that could be a great opportunity also for Simon to prepare some spells that he might need the next day, like I said in the beginning. But no, they just turn up, it's night. And they could have easily explained that away, like Simon could have said something like, the light of day would be pain for the corpses, and so that's why they're doing it at night, or the cleric who gave me the token told me it only works at night, followed by someone else saying, of course. Like something like that, like a little prod at the trope of doing creepy things at night for some reason. But no, none of that happened. They've got torches that produce no smoke. Medieval torches would produce a lot of smoke. That's a problem in a lot of fantasy films, a lot of historical films. It's also here, so I just thought I'd mention it. Why don't they use dancing lights instead? Dancing lights is a cantrip, so a 0th level spell that doesn't... So, remember when I said that spell slots used to expend a spell? Well, for 0 level spells, that isn't the case. You prepare it, and then you can cast it as many times as you want in that day. Dancing lights is a magic spell that a bard has access to. I wonder where that gate leads. There's a gate there just leading off into the forest. I wonder where that leads. Anyway, so you should have access to that spell, but of course, our main D&D character, Bard, doesn't use any of his spells or class abilities, so no dancing lights. Instead, they use torches that don't produce any smoke. Then Holger says, and I quote, "I'd always imagined I'd be buried in a sacred ground like this," showing that she, the sanctity of this place is sacred to her. And yet, as we'll see later on, she doesn't make any effort to ensure that the bodies are reburied, or even that they've asked them all the questions, which will make more sense later on. So, it just feels like she suddenly doesn't care at all, even though previously there was a point made about her caring. Also, look at those trees. Oh, that doesn't come out right in film, but that is quite a beautiful scene. Anyway, there's a comment about the arbitrary nature of the spell only allowing 5 questions, which I think is great. Just poking a little bit of fun about the game design reasons for a lot of these spells. So I like that. Which is great, except that spell slots aren't a thing. So, hold on, I need to reposition this slightly, 1 second. Yeah, so spell slots aren't a thing, so even if this, I mean, he's using a token to cast this, so it wouldn't even make a difference, but yeah, even, I won't go into that, I've already talked enough about that. So then, we get into, where was I? Okay, so explaining the spell, he says, at which point he will die again, never to be re-revived. Talking about after the 5 questions have been asked. That's not how the spell Talk with Dead works. No, it's 10 days. After 10 days, you can ask the corpse another 5 questions. But then, so my question is, why did they change this? Because it feels like they want to build tension. Oh, so there's a lovely little stream down there. Anyway, yeah, it feels like they want to build tension, but then they don't use it. They ask 5 questions and they mess up, and they have lost the opportunity to ever ask this corpse another question. So then they just revive another corpse. And revive another corpse and revive another corpse and keep going, which is great, because that's that's what D&D players would do. They'd find, hold on, I can use this spell how many times? Okay, we'll just ask another corpse some questions. You can see up there is the sign where we're going. There's actually Barry Pomeroy Castle in the distance. I'm not sure if you can see it, if you can make it out. It's up. Actually, is it? Yeah, it's up there somewhere. You should be able to see it somehow. Anyway, it's in the distance. So them overcoming this issue is great. But why even make a point about only having to do 5 questions? It could have just so the thing is, they're under time pressure. They have to get in there before the games to be able to get the treasure and stuff like that. I think they've already established this. So if they probably don't have 10 days. So they've already got the time pressure. Why change the spell? Then in the flashback, when they're talking with the corpses during the battle, we see a black dragon, which is rendered beautifully and accurately, like how black dragons look in D&D. And it uses acid breath weapon, which is also spot on, so that's good. And then the Speak with Dead spell, which is what they're using, in addition to allowing another 5 questions after 10 days, also only lasts 10 minutes. You use it, you've got 10 minutes to ask 5 questions, and then after those 10 minutes are up, well, the corpse dies again, basically. They've changed it so that it stays alive forever until those 5 questions are asked, which only, I mean, it only gets played as a joke for the end credits, basically. Well, there are also jokes during the scene, but then during the end credits, we see one of the corpses that they didn't ask all 5 questions is still alive, still sitting in its coffin, waiting. That seems very, very, very broken, because imagine if a corpse, you've just reawakened the corpse, just don't ask him questions, and then he's alive again. Imagine if someone's just died, your friend's just died, and I mean, I guess the only balance is that with this spell, if you use it, you can't ever re-revive them. So that might be an issue, but still it seems a bit broken. Also, this looks great. Hold on. You've got water coming down there, and then flowing down there, and then going underneath here, and then I hope you can see this properly, and then flows out there. That's a great little spot. Right, so our footpath continues over that way. Unsuitable for motor vehicles. Good, I'm not a motor vehicle. Public way, so this is Totnes. Totnes that way. Good, so that happens. Where was I? Alright, yes, this broke, yeah. And then more knowledge skill checks happen to find out about the Thayan Paladin Xenk Yendar. Xenk Yendar. And that's great D&D stuff. It's like, yeah, well, okay, the helmet's not here, but there was this guy who it was given to, who took it. Does anyone know this guy? And then they roll knowledge skill checks, history probably. Or maybe religion, maybe planes, I don't know. They rolled some sort of knowledge check, and actually, I've heard of him too. I know where he is. And then the story continues. That's spot on D&D stuff. I'm glad that they, yeah, just give you a nice little view back there. Lovely. Anyway, that's spot on D&D stuff. And then they say that he is in Mornbrine's Shield, which is a town, and I looked this up, and that is an actual town from the Forgotten Realms Sword Coast setting, which is near the Evermoors, and that is actually how it's displayed, so how it's shown. And they don't point that out, it's just continuity that's there in the background, and I'm happy about it. Now I've got to figure out where I am. Right, so after briefly consulting the map, which is right here, one second, which is right there, I've decided to quickly go up to the castle. I don't think you can actually get in there without paying, but we can quickly go up there, and then we'll come back down and walk towards Totnes again. So, hold on, let me just quickly get up these stones. I don't want to accidentally trip while I'm expositing to you. So, then more travel is skipped, and they're going from somewhere over here. Again, I don't know exactly from where they're going, so I guess I can't say how much travel is skipped, but more travel is skipped. They basically, the scene's over, and they're there. Okay, that's... Well, they could have done something, but anyway. And then Xenk saves a humanoid kitten out of the mouth of a huge fish by communicating with the fish, maybe? He puts his hand there, and then the fish opens the mouth and he pulls the baby kitten out, returns it to its mother. And is that a cleric's ability? Actually, is it a cleric or paladin? Is that a paladin's ability? Because Xenk is a paladin by class. I thought that would have been more of a druidic thing, to communicate with the animal and then do that, but of course it's to introduce Xenk, so I'm fine with it. He might be multi-classing, who knows. And Xenk is of course an NPC, non-player character, who the GM just has so much fun with, and I love that. That's really great. Yeah, Xenk is such a great example of a GM's favorite NPC I've got written down here, because he's really helpful and friendly, and he has ties to the backstory because of Edgin having been a harper, and also he is a Thayan, so he's from the land that the Red Wizards rule. And he's got a funny way of talking, and that gets on players' nerves. And he's talking in ways that sound wise and clever, but actually are nonsense. And Edgin calls him out on it, so... he gives guidance when the players are otherwise tumped, and that all is great. Great D&D, well made. Yeah, that's great. So then there's flashbacks with Xenk as he was a child when Zastam takes over the Thane government and undeadifies many people to create an undead army. And this happened in the mid-1370s, according to official sources. And the film, again, takes place in the 1490s. So Xenk is quite old at this point, and he looks young. He looks like he's in his 20s. So does this mean that his brush with beckoning death, which is how Zastam created the undead army in the first place, does that because in the flashback he is touched by it, not taken over by, but touched by it. Does that mean that he is technically an undead, and thus his body doesn't age? Or is that somehow related? I have no idea, but might be. Is Xenk... hold on. Oh, right, so Xenk and the Harpers... insistence on treasure being given away a reference to paladins in AD&D, because the Harpers have this code where any treasures that they get, they have to give back to the people. And, well, the people, or, yeah. So, I've got a little excerpt here from the original AD&D, so Advanced D&D First Edition D&D rulebook, which I'm going to read out in a moment. 1 second, I just need to quickly do something. 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I've got the excerpt here. So, they will never retain wealth, keeping only sufficient treasures to support themselves in a modest manner, pay henchmen, men-at-arms, and servitors, and to construct or maintain a small castle. Your DM will give you details of this as necessary. Excess is given away, as is the tithe. Tithe, by the way, is like a tax almost, or something that you can either voluntarily or as an obligation to give away to a religious thing, probably, or something like that. An imminent tithe, 10%, of all income, be it treasure, wages, or whatever must be given to whatever charitable religious institution, not a clerical player character, of lawful good alignment the paladin selects. That's the excerpt from the original D&D, so AD&D, Advanced D&D, original, so First Edition rulebook. And I wonder if that influenced the decision of the Harpers. Now, the Harpers are, as far as I know, an actual... Well, actually, I haven't researched this, so I can't say as far as I know, but I suspect that they are an actual Forgotten Realms faction from the lore. They might not be, I don't know. The Red Wizards definitely are. So maybe that's connected, because I know that the guy Ed Greenwood, who came up with Forgotten Realms mostly, he was a player from the very beginning, so he would have known these things. So maybe that's related. So then, they find out that he's hidden the Helm of Disjunction in the Underdark. And when I heard this the first time watching, I got really excited, because if you don't know what the Underdark is, it is an interconnected network of caves and tunnels that span the entire underside of Toril, which is the planet, of which Faerun is a continent. It is full of abominations and evils that fled the light when good came to the world, I think, such as aboleths, beholders, cloakers, drow, illithids, and many more. So you've got this entire world of caves and tunnels underground, and that's where they're going to go. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit more about that, but first I'm going to show you a little bit of this to the right there, which, if I turn the right way, you will be able to see is some tree. Ah, no, it's a castle. You can see this is Barry Pomeroy Castle. Right there. Looks lovely. And yeah, you do have to pay admittance to get in. So, yeah. That is lovely, and we're up here. And, right. I'm going to head back down that way, and then I'll continue talking when I'm down there, because that was quite steep, and I don't want to actually accidentally trip and fall as I'm going down, because I'm expositing. So I'll see you in a moment. Right, so I've just come back down to where that map is. So you can see that up there, hold on, that up there, that's the path going to the castle where we've just come from, and that's where we're going to go down towards Totnes. So 1 second. I just need to make sure that that's not in the sleeve of my jacket. Oh, there's a goose there. Hold on. I'm going to turn this. Maybe you can see the goose. 1 second. If I turn it like that, you should be able to see they're geese. They're just eating, probably grass, actually, the thing that they're eating. I'll get back to talking about D&D in a moment. We have to observe the wildlife first. Ooh, look at that, geese. I hope that these are going to be more friendly than the cattle earlier. I mean, the cattle were friendly. They just didn't want me going through their field. Okay, so, right, now, back on to... I hope you saw those. I actually couldn't tell because that uses the camera that faces the screen, so me, so I could actually see what I was filming just then. So, fly on my paper. So, right, there's just a little look back there. Ah, look at how picturesque that is. Barry Pomeroy, people. Come visit, it's great. You can see back there, there's a flowering tree in the distance, just above my head now. Right, so, actually I need to adjust this slightly again, 1 second. There we go. Right, the Underdark. The Underdark. An exciting place full of adventure and horror. Yeah, because it's pitch black for most of it. It is genuinely horrific. Like, for example, just look up some of the creatures I just spoke about. Look up illithids, drow, beholders, and aboleths, and cloakers as well. Anyway, so dwarves and gnomes also build strongholds here sometimes. So lots of great opportunities. So then they enter the Underdark with an entrance, an orifice as it's called in film, and right. Then, from entering to reaching the cave with the helm, because one of the caves actually does have the helm. Actually, 1 second, I'm just going to quickly put in a little clip of that castle because that is a great angle from it. 1 second. There we go, Barry Pomeroy Castle. Beautiful view of it. Very nice. Just a little pan over to the left. Because this is a beautiful space that deserves to be appreciated, even if it is just through a camera. And in spring it looks so nice with all of those lush green new grown leaves. Anyway, sorry if there's a little shaky, I've got it on a stick. Now, back to D&D film. Right, so now I've got this camera again, and we'll continue walking. So, actually, 1 second. I need to handle this properly. So, yeah, like I was saying, from entering the Underdark, so jumping, well, lowering themselves down this vertical shaft to get into the Underdark, to finding the helm, because the helm is in a cave, and to entering the cave where they find the helm. So the entire travel throughout this globe-spanning subterranean network of tunnels and caves and monsters and civilizations. That time, which could be an entire feature-length film, only lasts for, and I timed this, 2 minutes and 7 seconds. 2 minutes and 7 seconds. I was a bit disappointed when I first saw the film. I know that there's so much plot in the film, and the film has to keep moving, and you have to get to the points, because you don't have that much time to tell this. So I get it. I get why they cut it down to that, well, why they only had it that short in there. 1 second. Need to adjust this slightly. There we go. Like, I get it. But you could have given us a little bit more, especially when you consider that the following fight/action scene, which is from when it begins, so when they first see the Thayan assassins, to when they exit the Underdark, so that whole fight scene, that whole action scene, that has 9 minutes time. It's pretty much exactly 9 minutes as well. So 2 minutes, 7 seconds for exploring and traveling and wandering at this and experiencing this world, and 9 minutes for an action fight scene. Yeah, can you tell that I would have preferred it if they had done this differently? So anyway, yeah, in those 2 minutes and 7 seconds, the only parts of this colossal environment that is the Underdark that we see are one tunnel, which is illuminated by little things on the walls, so natural lighting. There's one ledge where they're going along and they look out and they see this beautiful city, which I suspect is a drow city. So imagine this colossal, enormous, cavernous space with stalagmites the size of skyscrapers, and you've got this beautiful city of lights wrapped around it, with lights of people moving through the streets in the distance. And it looked so beautiful, but we literally only see it in the background. Again, it's like behind glass. I can't touch it, I can't go there. And actually, that looks really nice. That foliage there, one second, let me just get a quick shot of that, 1 second. 1 second. Just look at the bright green of that foliage, of those plants there. Now that looks like summer, right there. And actually, now that I've got this stick, I can give you a bit of a higher viewing angle of it. And of course, if I pan up, you can see Berry Pomeroy Castle up there again. But now, back to the Underdark. Dun dun dun! Okay, so back to the Underdark. Like I said, actually, hold on. Let me just quickly adjust this slightly so it's a little easier to handle. There we go. Right, so back to the Underdark. Yeah, we see it, but there's a city, but it's behind glass. We don't get there. And those are the only two scenes, and that's also got loads of ambient light. So those are the only two scenes that we get of the Underdark before we go into the huge lava cave where the helm is. And 1 second, I need to turn the page. 1 moment, just enjoy the foliage while I turn the page. 1 second. Is that 1 page? No, that's 2 pages. 1 second. There we go. Now, come with me again. There we go. That's all good. Right, so, and so in this dangerous place with all these monsters and horrors beyond, well, I would say beyond imagination, but you kind of have to imagine them in D&D. The only creatures we meet are a few intellect devourers, which are basically like brains with legs that eat your intelligence, basically, at least as far as I understand them. And they are played for a laugh, for a joke, for a cheap joke at the character's expense. Basically, the joke is, so they're on this ledge, and these intellect devourers come up and Xenk says, careful, they are drawn to intelligence and they will eat your brains, basically, I think. And so they go up against this ledge and the intellect devourers just walk past. And then Edgin says something to the extent of, I'm a little insulted, or something like that. Like, yeah, it's a cheap joke at the expense of the characters about their lack of intelligence. And that's the only horror monsters we see of the Underdark in this horror space that is the Underdark. It's played for a cheap laugh. Anyway. Okay, so then they get into the cave, the lava cave where the helm is. And there's a bridge with this puzzle where you've got to only step on those tiles, but then avoid those tiles, and this whole complicated thing, and that the NPC is explaining. And then Simon, one of the players, just accidentally steps on it, the whole thing collapses, and before the GM, the NPC, could even finish explaining it. And that is a spot-on D&D thing. Like, yeah, that's how stuff like that goes often. So, or often goes, I should say. So that happens, and they softlock themselves to that, basically. So then, as the GM is desperately trying to give the players a new way to continue, some way of getting across that gap. Oh, that looks beautiful over there. 1 second. To get across that gap, so another thing happens that is very, very spot-on D&D, basically. So, actually, I'll just hold this like... Actually, maybe I could hold it like that. Yeah, that's comfortable. Although I should extend it slightly with this, maybe. There we go. If I'm holding it like this. So, actually, 1 moment. I need to readjust this. There we go. Right, so the GM's desperately trying to give them a new way to continue. And so the walking stick that Marlamin, that Holger got from Marlamin, which she already had originally given him in backstory reasons, in backstory, it turns out that it's actually a magic staff that is basically a portal gun. And Simon realizes, oh, actually that's a hither-thither staff, and there we go, and now we've got a way to continue. And that, yeah, that really did feel like such a D&D thing to happen. Like, again, in a normal fantasy film, I would complain about that it's lazy writing. You put the characters in a spot where they can't continue, and then suddenly something happens where they can continue. But that's how D&D works a lot of the time. So, that's good. And then, yeah, the sound of the staff, the hither-thither staff, is very, very similar to the sound of the portal gun in the Portal games. And it basically functions almost identically the same. So I'm glad that they paid homage a little bit to that, because people are going to compare it. So acknowledging that was a good choice to make. So, also, the use, from this point forward, the use of the hither-thither staff, the portal gun staff, is creative. They actually use it in creative ways like real D&D players would. It's not just a plot device that's used here and then forgotten about. No, they actually pretty much continuously use it creatively. And I was really, really happy about that. And I'm glad they did it that way. So thank you, film, for doing it that way. Then Xenk, so they get the helm, and then Xenk says, "There is evil here." Actually, yeah, that is an exact quote. He says, "There is evil here." And then we see the Thane assassins are standing right there. Because there was a shot of them keeping track of the players before, and so they somehow made it down here as well. But how did they get down when the bridge was destroyed? They didn't have the staff, and we didn't see another way around. There might have been a separate entrance, but they would have had to follow the party to know where they were going, because only Xenk knew where the helm is. So they had to follow. So how did they get anyway, they could have had teleportation stuff. There might have been a mage with them. Only the mage didn't go across, because in the entire ensuing fight scene, we don't see them casting a single spell. So the mage isn't with them now, but there might have been one who stayed on the other side, but then didn't help them fight. It's a little, might be a little plot holy, but it's okay. So then Xenk, the NPC, fights and defeats the enemies alone without the help of the party. Well, I mean, the party just watch, basically. And at this point, Xenk is pretty much... Xenk has gone from the GM's favorite NPC to an actual DM NPC, or GMPC. No, sorry, DMPC or GMPC. It stands for Game Master Player Character. It's basically when the Game Master has an NPC, a non-player character, who is as fleshed out and capable, or maybe even more so in a lot of cases, than the players. And that can work, but there's a little river under there. That can work, but oftentimes it's problematic because it takes away focus from the players. And in this case, literally the entire fight scene with the Thane assassins, the Game Master is basically fighting with himself, playing with himself to defeat these enemies while the players just watch. That's not fun for the players in a game of D&D. So, yeah. Then, okay. Then we get. Actually, yeah. One point is, what's the narrative value of Thane assassins attacking at this point? Because they don't get the helm, we don't know anything more, they pretty much get defeated pretty much instantly, pretty much. What's the narrative value of them attacking here? It's pretty much just for an action scene. The filmmakers wanted to have an action scene here, and so they made the Thane assassins attack. Also, there's this beautiful, what I think might be an old mill or guardhouse or something there. Interesting. Anyway, so Yeah. Okay, then they trying to escape the Thane assassins, while the fight is still going on, trying to escape the Thane assassins. They climb this literal mountain of humanoid skeletons that is piled up to this cave entrance. There are thousands of people who've died whose skeletons are there. How did that happen, exactly? Like, we find out pretty quickly that that cave entrance they were heading to is actually the lair of a dragon, a red dragon specifically, so a chromatic dragon, who presumably killed all those people. But then why are they all piled up leading up to his cave? Yeah, I got no explanation for that. So then we quickly learn that the red dragon, who is actually, in according to the rules, has a fire breath weapon. Some other dragons have, like blue dragons have electric damage, same as bronze, I think. And then, of course, black dragons have the acid breath that we already see in the flashback. Red dragons have fire breath. And we quickly see that this dragon's breath weapon, the fire breath, isn't working. The dragon is very fat, and the breath weapon isn't working. And that is clearly because the GM didn't want a TPK, a total party kill, all the player characters are dead. He didn't want that, so he nerfed the dragon, got rid of the breath attack weapon, and I quite like that. It's a good example of homebrewing, some light homebrewing. Then the DMPC may have fudged some dice rolls, to save Edgin's life, because Edgin is pretty much dead at this point, because he's sliding down this moving platform. Look at that view over there. Hold on. There we go. Look at that. Even though the trees back there are still mostly looking a bit bare, it's still beautiful. Anyway, yeah, sliding down this platform towards the open mouth of the dragon, and then the DMPC, Xenk, does some acrobatics and flips and lands with a sword through the dragon's head to temporarily take the dragon out of action. It doesn't do enough damage to actually kill the dragon, but does enough to temporarily stop the dragon and save Edgin's life. I think the DMPC fudged some rolls there, because the GM didn't want his main character to die. So then, yeah, the players run into a dead end, and the GM gives them hints as to how to escape in the form of the seawater dripping through the ceiling as the dragon's coming in, because the dragons followed them, and so now they can't escape except for that hint. So that's good. And then the players take that little hint and make this, like, this feels really good, like really good D&D. Because there's the situation, no obvious escape, a little hint from the GM, and the player characters make up this ludicrous plan. Or they think, okay, well, actually the dragon's breath weapon isn't working, but maybe it's actually still emitting gas, because apparently that's how fire breath works. Emitting gas that just isn't being ignited. So we've got water here. So what if, I know that you, Simon, you've got a little flame cantrip thing. So what if we aggravate the dragon so that he tries to use his breath weapon and fills the room with his gas, and then we dive under the water, you ignite it, explosion that'll collapse the ceiling in, and we can hopefully swim up and escape that way. And the GM, of course, loves the idea and allows them to try it, and it works. That was perhaps the best, if not one of the best, but perhaps the best example of this film actually being a D&D game. So I'm really happy with how that worked out. Except that they then swim up through the ocean, through the floor of the ocean, swim up. And there's a nice little brook there. Little stream, there, look at that. It's flowing under the path. Anyway, So wouldn't the entire ocean empty out into the Underdark if there's a breach? Maybe the drow, they've got magic, right? Maybe they are just gonna seal it. Maybe they're gonna take care of it, or the dwarves, because there are civilizations down there. Pity we don't see any of them up close. Anyway, that's the Underdark finished. So now, that's a nice, hold on. Look at that stump, just a little stump there in the sunlight. Anyway, so then we get, actually I'll pause and resume because I don't want anything to corrupt. Be with you in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So then we get to the beach scene, and at this point, either, hold on 1 second, I need to wrap this around 1 moment. I don't want there to be excess noise. So at this point, the GM realizes, or maybe the players told the GM, that Xenk is a DMPC. He's too powerful, he just saves the day. He literally fought those, did the fight by himself, and literally telling the players that he'll take care of this. And the players, and I'm not talking about the characters, I'm talking about the real-life players at the table, if this were an actual game of D&D, are not happy with this. And so they tell the GM that, I would imagine, and Xenk leaves the party, literally saying, so they are saying, so Edgin says, aren't you coming? And they says, not that I could, this is your quest. And the party pleads for him to stay, because actually, in that case, maybe the GM realized his mistake, and the party would love him to stay because he makes things so easy, and the GM doesn't want that. So the GM, even though the party pleads, he still goes because he's much better at everything that they are. That's spot on D&D. Like, yeah, the GM realizing he's made a mistake and then correcting it by taking out that character. Yeah, and then then we get a really lovely joke, which is they're on this beach, there are boulders around, and Xenk walks along the beach, leaving the party. We see him walking in this really, really straight line towards a boulder. And instead of walking around the boulder, he literally doesn't even slow down, walks over the top of the boulder and down the other side and continues walking. And I can only assume that that's a joke about the interesting AI of NPCs in video games like Skyrim or Oblivion or something, where an NPC is just robotically pathfinding to a certain location and then walks over scenery like that, which is a good joke. Except that the film, for some reason, the film has Edgin narrate the joke, which is slapstick physical comedy, is being narrated while we're seeing it. He literally says he walks in such a straight line, doesn't he? Oh, there, hold on, there's a boulder. Is he gonna walk around it? Nope, straight over it. That's pretty much a quote. I haven't got it written down, so I can't tell you if that's an exact quote. Also, look at those lovely cedar trees. There might be cedar trees. There's definitely some sort of conifer there. Look at how tall that is. Look at how tall those trees are. Just look at that. Anyway, yeah, so again, the film sets up a joke. It's a good joke, and then ruins it by treating you like you're an idiot and wouldn't know it if a beholder hit you with a disintegration ray. Now, you might actually not know that because it might kill you before you actually had the capacity of realizing what had happened, but bad example. Actually, there's mud here, so I'll quickly go past this. Well, I'll go past this little bit and then I'll continue. 1 second, because I do need to pay a little bit of attention here. You can see the mud down there. Probably, yeah. Anyway, so... Right, then we get to the attunement thing, because Simon has to attune to the Helm of Disjunction, because it's a powerful magical artifact, and he can't just use it, he has to attune to it. Now, in the rules, to attune to a magic item, you have to spend a short rest, which is 1 hour, in constant touch with the object. So you've got to have constant contact while constantly focusing on the object. And then again, after 1 hour, you've attuned to the magic item. So Simon can't attune. The CGI for that scene is brilliant. That looks great. Let's make sure I didn't skip anything. Okay, so yeah, he can't do that. And then Edgin goes to sleep on the beach in some beach grass and dreams flashbacks to when his wife was still alive. And just look down there. That's where the river is, down there where we were. Anyway, well, we weren't there, we were back there, but it's fine. So, in the flashback, so there's the dragonfly flashback with his wife, and it's painfully obvious. Like, they're hiding under the bed, and then it turns out there's a dragonfly in the room, and he tries to... It's like the script is written as though he's trying to capture it, even though he, in the film, is actually trying to kill it. And then, I think he's trying to kill it. And then she goes over to the window and opens it, and then literally says, hold on, one second. She literally says, "Stop trying to capture it. You just have to let it go." Says the main character's dead wife, who has been trying to resurrect for 2 years, which is the thing that got him into trouble in the first place. Well, the current trouble into the first place, is literally in a flashback dream telling him to not capture it, but let it go. Okay, that's painfully obvious, but fine, okay. Okay, then everything falls apart as Simon cannot attune. He's too insecure about his magic powers, he can't attune. And then... sorry, there's a bit of a big text block. Then everything falls apart because Edgin had previously lied when Simon had said about that, and then, well, omitted the truth. And then the bard uses his communication skills to bring everybody back together. And most of the characters, like the other characters, most of the characters I didn't really care about during the film again. Most of the scenes, except for when they met Marlamin. But this scene, where they're at the beach and there's the stone, and after Edgin did his speech, and he sits down on the rock to try to figure out a plan of how to get his daughter back, that actually feels good. That feels like a father who's, against all reason, trying to somehow save his daughter. And there are people coming, so I'll talk a bit in a moment. And then all of them getting there and sitting down and joining him, that felt good. That made me care, so 1 second. Right, so they've just passed. So this scene where all of the characters are on the rock trying to figure out a plan of how to succeed is the first time in the film that I cared about these characters as a party. Because when they met Marlamin, it made me care about Holger. 1 second. It made me care about Holger as a standalone character. It made me care a bit about Edgin because he showed compassion for his friend and tried to soothe her pain. This is the first time that I've cared about the characters as a party, as a group. And we're literally 1 hour and 25 minutes into the film. Okay, so then, yeah, things not going to plan, and the characters having to stop and think and talk and come up with a plan that uses the tools they have creatively is spot on D&D. And that's exactly what they do. They come up with an idea of using the hither-thither staff to sneak a portal into the treasure chamber using one of the valuable transports that are coming into the city because of the arena fight thing. So to sneak a portal into that, so that they can then later use the other portal to get into the vault that way, if Simon still can't attune. And that was great D&D. I really enjoyed that. Seeing that was great. And then we get the wagon scene, which is where they put the portal onto the frame of a painting, and then try to sneak that in using some sticky resin to glue it to the bottom of the wagon as it goes over, and then to use the other portal to remove the planks and then swing through the portal to then get into the wagon. It's complicated, it's brilliant, and it uses the tools they have creatively, and I was really happy about it. With one slight exception, which is when Edgin, he's laying in some leaves as the wagons go over, and he puts it underneath and hides in the leaves again. And then just as the rear guards passed, he sits up, gives a thumbs up to the rest of the group who are waiting in the trees by the side. How did they not see him? Furthermore, okay, that's fine. They might not have seen him, except in a later scene, we see that they're on the back of the wagon. There is a guard with two mounted crossbows keeping watch over the rear of the convoy, of the transport. How did he not see him? That is a plot hole. There's no other way of describing that. That is a plot hole, and that is a beautiful view down there. Anyway, I need to actually flip page 1 second. Okay, I have flipped the script. No, that's a different thing. I've flipped the page. 1 second. And, okay, next thing is we get to the Colosseum games thing. It's a Flavian amphitheater, basically, where, okay, so basically, everything's going according to plan. They go into their room in the tavern there, and we see a character in the background. She looks familiar. She's actually the lady who was in the Absolution Council in the beginning. Anyway, they go into their room, they create another portal on the table, and they see a stone floor. The painting had fallen over, and now they just got access to the floor. So the plan goes wrong again, and they've got to adapt and think on their feet and think a way out of the situation, and that is again spot on D&D. The GM, actually, yeah, that's the thing, because I very much liked Simon saying, "Why does nothing go our way?" And that is a funny joke because, of course, in D&D, to make things interesting and fun, the GM makes things go wrong, and the players have to adapt, and that's the fun of the game. And so I really quite liked a character actually saying, "Hold on, why do things never go our way?" And the best thing about this joke/reference is that it wasn't explained. It's just a joke that's in there that relies on the audience's attention and cognitive powers to understand it, to comprehend it. And it works. And it's funny. And it's good. So then we get to the sending stones. And so how the sending stones work. I actually looked this up in... Actually, I've got to go... I can go on the side here. So how the sending... Because there's mud. 1 second. You can kind of see mud there a bit. So, but it's fairly dry. So I actually looked this up in 5th edition rules. And how sending stones work is... So basically they're a paired pair of stones that allow a user through touch to automatically cast a sending spell to the holder, to whatever creature's holding or touching the other sending stone. So only one message can be, you can only send one message to the other stone. So actually no, you can only send a message to the stone that's paired with, and you can only send one message per day. Additionally, that one message may only contain 25 or fewer words, And the message is only heard within the mind of whatever creature's holding or touching the stone. Additionally, if the other stone is not being touched by a creature, you know it and you don't send the message. It doesn't count as your message once per day. So that's how they work in the game, in the rules. And how they work in the film is they're mobile phones. Granted, they do only work for an hour, but they are mobile phones. They're all interconnected and you can just talk and it's like a speaker, everybody around can hear them. And it's not limited to what you can send, how much, or anything like that. So, there are very good balance reasons for these items to work the way they do in the game. If you ignore these restrictions, you break your world. No, I'm not exaggerating. Just imagine introducing affordable mobile phones into a medieval setting, even if they only work for an hour, and think of the ramifications. Now, the affordable bit might sound a little, well, actually, magic items are expensive. Not everybody can afford them. But I meant affordable more in the sense of a king could probably afford these for his armies or for his messengers or things like that. Imagine the amount of communication an army could have with these sending stones. You could never sneak up on an army like that. And any guard, you'd be able to hear clonk on the head or sounds of battle, something. You know, there's something up. Yeah, anyway. Then they try to sneak in, and there is an illusion of Edgin, who's singing a song. Hello, cows. We've got more cows down there. Actually, I do hope... Is that... Oh, that is a different separated field. Yeah. So, the illusion, that's great, trying to distract the guards with it. And how Edgin is deformed and the illusion breaks down as Simon is distracted also is great, because those spells, like Minor Image or something like that, is actually a concentration spell. So it only works as long as you're concentrating on it. So 1 second, just quickly raise that up and go through here. I don't think there are any cows in this field. If there are, then I've got a long way to go around if they don't let me through. Yeah, so that works great. My only thing with it is, why is the illusion of Edgin and not some random guy who the guards couldn't recognize? Because they're wanted criminals at this point, so why? Anyway, and 2, why isn't the bard casting this spell? Because this is a spell that the bard would have access to, I think. Oh right, the bard never uses any spells or class abilities in the entire film. Yeah, I can't really say much more about that. It's a good opportunity to give Edgin something to do, especially since he is a bard, he's musically focused, so creating an illusion of someone playing music and distracting would be maybe good, but apparently not. So then, the new part, oh yeah, right, so back when Forge was showing the rich guys the vault with the seal with Safina, he mentioned that new, oops, sorry, it was a bit muddy, mentioned that new portcullises have been installed, and if anything goes wrong, the entire thing is sealed off, no one goes in or out. That doesn't pay off here. They go in, they pull a thing for a portcullis to come down, more guards from the tower, of course, chase them, and I just thought that I expected that to pay off here, but it didn't. Not really a complaint, but just something I noticed. 1 second. Oh right, yeah, the woman from the Absolution Council, who I mentioned before, who saw the party members going up into their tavern room. Actually, which? Yeah, it was all, yeah. So I was thinking, were there actually party members she recognized there? But yes, they went up. So actually, who was it? Was it Holger? Actually, now I can't remember. You'll have to watch that scene again and let me know if there are actually party members. Actually, no, it had to have been all of them, because that was when they realized the plan was failing with the actual portal. Never mind. Anyway, so yeah, she, of course, alerts the guards that wanted criminals are in the tavern. And it's not over-explained. It's, in fact, not explained at all. She just says... we just see a few seconds where she mentions the Absolution Council, points upstairs, and it's in the background, and it's great. Another thing that, yes, if you're completely distracted by watching something on your mobile phone while watching the film, you will probably not notice, but if you're even paying a little bit of attention, you'll notice, and it's not over-explained. Great. Well done. Then there's a big fight scene with Holger where she battles some people and her axe falls into some molten metal. And she pulls the axe out and it's all covered in globules of molten metal. It's not, I don't think it's iron, because with the way how it glows, it is much cooler than that. It looks like something like aluminium, maybe, because what color and how bright something glows isn't irrespective of the material, but just of the heat, of the temperature. So since the metal was molten with that kind of orange glow, it's probably something like aluminium, although it's probably iron. The people making the film probably just didn't pay attention to it, but pulls out these globules of this stuff on it, and she then, and I quote, says, "I don't mind that." And now we get back to what I said pretty much near the beginning of this breakdown, which is that she was so concerned that axe was only being oiled twice a month, not once a week. So why is she okay with the craftsmanship of this axe being ruined by globules of random metal on it? That doesn't make the axe sharper. Yes, it gives it more mass, which might mean that if you hit someone over the head with it, it might give more blunt damage, because it's heavier, but then the balance is off. Where you grip it is off. Plus it loses its edge, literally. Because otherwise, if you wanted a blunt weapon, just use a warhammer. Which way does the path go? I think the path goes straight ahead. Yeah, that doesn't look like where I'm supposed to go. Yeah, if you just look around, like there. Yeah, it just looks like path continues straight. Although, actually, saying that, there is a sign that says private. So, I guess going this way. Yeah, this is probably the right way to go. So, yeah, that doesn't... And I don't know why they did it. It doesn't really come up in the film at all. The axe just now looks like it's got globs of metal on it, pretty much. And then, okay, then we get Simon finally becoming self-assertive is good, and it feels good. It feels, it does make me care about the character. It feels good when he finally manages to attune to it and use the helmet. And I was going to talk about how I don't think the way the helmet makes sense is consistent, but it's not really explained in enough detail to really say. So I'm just going to skip over that because it doesn't work. So yeah, use the helmet. But attuning to the helm still, according to the rules, needs an hour of constant contact during a short rest while focusing on it. And he just attunes to it in an instant. So, oh, that's a lovely little river down there. Yeah, so also, that's a nice little house. A little bit secluded. But it's nice nonetheless. So, yeah, according to the rules, he can't attune to it like that in an instant, but homebrew. So then, right. Safina tricks Edgin, who's trying to get Kira, his daughter, and she it's probably an illusion. She looks like her and then tricks him and captures him. And then Forge comes and he says, well, I'm really sorry about this. I don't like seeing you die, and that's why I'm going to leave the room. And then he says, well, at least let us die with honor, and let us fight in the arena, in the games. And so Forge says, no, it's better if you die here. And even if you somehow survive the games, Safina would just it's better. And then Safina is the one who says, no, he's right, they should die in the arena. They should fight in the arena. Why does she do that? She's the one who originally wanted them to be killed when Forge wanted them to just be sent back to prison. I guess it's just the GM not wanting to TPK his party and needing some sort of way for them to escape, unless she wants them to be transformed into undead, which is her plan. Well, Zestam's plan. Anyway, where was I? Oh right, we see the arena, and it's very much like the Colosseum, like the Flavian Amphitheatre in Rome, where sections of the floor can be raised up and lowered down. Only here is of course done with magic, and they make this big maze, which is stupid because you've got thousands of people paying tickets to see this Bloodsport, and then it all happens in a maze with walls so high that even from the top seats of the arena, of the stadium, you can't see what's going on inside. You're just there staring at walls. That doesn't make sense. It basically just doesn't make sense. And if you think it does, please tell me, but I don't think it makes sense. I do get that they wanted it to be so high so that the monsters they've got in it can't jump out over the walls, but just have wizards put a magical force barrier over it or something like that. Right, then we get the displacer beasts, and yeah, they're very faithfully recreated. That's good. And then we see, oh, there are chests in this maze where you can get items. There's gonna be a mimic, and lo and behold, there was a mimic. People who are not familiar with D&D might be surprised by that. People who are familiar with D&D pretty much guess it the instant they see a chest there. But that's good. It's good. Although you could have played that differently, but it's okay. Then we get to the gelatinous cubes. Now, well, the gelatinous cube is one of them. So in the film, it's underneath one of the segments of the wall. So the wall's on top, and it's the bottom cube of the wall segment, of the maze that raises up and down. And in the rules, gelatinous cubes have 15 foot of movement. So that's 15 foot of movement per 6 seconds per turn. Yeah? But it's stationary here. I guess maybe the wall is holding it in place, but surely it's made of, it's gelatinous. Surely it would just be squished. Also, one second, I just want to show you this view over there. You can see those little flowers up there on that meadow. Aww. Right. But anyway, that you can explain that away, it's fine. Then, trying to escape, Doric has the idea to jump into the gelatinous cubes the second before the gong gets hit and the walls of the maze get lowered down beneath the arena, where there obviously has to be some sort of access. Well, there probably is some sort of access. The issue is that, okay, so according to the rules, and I looked this up, according to the rules, if you enter a gelatinous cube, you take 3d6 acid damage, and then a further 6d6 of acid damage every 6 seconds that you spend in the cube. Basically, at the start of every turn, every time the gelatinous cube starts a turn, everything inside takes 66 acid damage. And then trying to pull a creature or an object out of the gelatinous cube also, this is a bit windy here, hold on. Yeah, also inflicts 3d6 acid damage every time. For reference, a scimitar attack does a base damage of 1d6. So you can tell that this is a lot of damage. But okay, if the players are high level enough, they might survive it. Let's see. So going through this, everybody enters the gelatinous cube and instantly takes 3d6 acid damage. Then Edgin, who's the one who spends the most time in the cube, he spends 44 seconds in the cube, which means 7 turns, so 7 times 66, so that's 42d6 of damage. 1 second. Yeah, I've got to hurry this up. Got a low battery warning, so I've got to hurry this up, yeah. So he takes 42d6 of damage, and then Doric spends 12 seconds in there, which means that she takes 12, well yeah, it's 66, so 12d6 of acid damage right there, in addition to 3d6 from entering. Then she becomes a snake. Now the closest thing I could find is a poisonous snake that a druid can transform into. And she spends 10 seconds in contact with the cube as that, which means she takes at least, well, she takes one hit, so 66 of acid damage in the snake form, plus 3 times 3d6 by grabbing in and pulling the others out. That's as her normal tiefling form. Now, a poisonous snake only has 2 hit points, and that's important because dropping to 0 or less hit points in an animal form as a druid automatically transforms you back and carries over excess damage. Which means, since she took a hit, so 66 of acid damage as a snake while she was slithering her way out of the cube, she would have had to take at least 2 damage. She would have had to take more than 2 damage, which means she would have transformed back into her normal self and be stuck in the cube. So the plan would have failed and they likely all would have died. If this gelatinous cube weren't also homebrew. It has to be. That's the only answer. It has to be. And I know it's a film, it's an action sequence, and it isn't really important, the exact rules of how this works, or if this would work in the game. But I found it fun to research that and to write it down and to figure it out, so that's the reason why I did it. You can easily explain it away as this is a homebrew creature, because I myself, with my monsters, I pretty much modify them every time I put them in. I very rarely put in a monster that's exactly got the stat blocks from the monster manual, so yeah, that works. It's just something I noticed. I need to now quickly change page, so I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, so we are now on the final page of my notes. By the way, I've got 5 pages of notes here, in case you were curious. So, they escape. And they take the ship from Forge with all the treasure in it, and they manage to escape. And then there's kind of fake foreshadowing where Edgin says to Kira, his daughter, "I'll never let anything get between us." Which, of course, in a film like this, means something's going to happen, and I'm going to have to let something get between us again. So let's have a look at the sign. 1 second, I need to figure out where we're going. I need to actually have a look at my map, I think, because there's a footpath going up there and a road going down there. Okay, so here, so this is what I'm looking at currently. So we've got a signpost with a footpath going up that way and a road going down that way. And we have to, well, let the car pass first, but we've got to go along the road, then turn right, and then pretty much go straight until we head to Totnes. Well, until we reach Totnes, basically. Oh, there's another car. Okay, so yeah, that's fake foreshadowing, because he says that, and then, of course, as they're trying to escape, the GM, with the players, of course, now have left a few plot threads untied, mainly Safina and what she's up to with the Red Wizards. And so things are going to go wrong. And the GM basically says, okay, you don't turn around, bad things are going to happen to Neverwinter. And because they're the heroes, and they've previously said they've never hurt anybody in all their thieving, they've got to turn back. So they turn back, and that was spot on D&D stuff. And then they've got creative use of the hither-thither staff to basically use one of the advertising hot air balloons to make Forge, the depiction of Forge on him, vomit out treasure as kind of a breadcrumb trail to lead all the people who are in the well, that's very, very nice. I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but it looks very nice IRL. Yeah, to lead all the people who are in the stadium seats out of the stadium. My thing here is, okay, I love the creative use, but why was this the arena space not sealed off before the spell began? Because Safina clearly has her helpers, and with the spell beginning, why not just seal it off? So yeah, they save a lot of people, and then as the fight with Safina is about to happen, Edgin turns to her and he said, hold on, there's wind, 1 second, I've got to turn so that it's in a bit of shielded space. I hope the wind isn't too strong. So, turns to her and he says to her, whatever happens to us, stay hidden. And then, of course, long fight scene happens, and it feels more like a choreographed dance because people aren't actually really taking injuries or wounds, which is okay. I mean, with the age range of the film, and I personally don't put much value on bloody fight scenes usually, so I'm actually quite okay with that, except of course it is quite a long fight, which I would have preferred that time to be spent exploring. But anyway, then at the end of it, actually no, I skipped ahead a bit. So, actually no, yeah, it says, whatever happens to us, stay hidden, use your pendant, okay? So then, in the fight, there are these, what I can only assume to be stone golems, these dragons that she animates, like Safina animates. Were they prepared beforehand? I don't know. Because the spell does also appear to require concentration, because they stop when she's unable to concentrate on them. So then Safina used another time stop spell, which haven't looked at the specific rules for that, but anyway, this is the thing she did in the backstory before. This is how they were originally captured, like Holger and Edgin were originally captured, and then she begins to exposit to the frozen body of Edgin and says, just as I begin to purge this place of its living filth, and so on. Hold on a minute. Hold on. I thought the Red Wizards were used undead as workers, so slaves or as soldiers in armies. Fae, as far as I know, still has a huge population of normal people who are ruled by the Red Wizards. Again, I haven't played in this setting, so I can't say for certain. But from what little research I did... 1 second. But from what little research I did, the Fae and the Red Wizards seem to just be ruling. Yes, they use undead as workers and in armies, but they don't want to rid the world of the filth that is the living. At least as far as I can tell. Anyway, we've not got much left. Then, okay. It turns out that Simon had actually counterspelled the time stop spell, which means that it didn't work. Basically, it didn't work. And they're all faking it. They all stood still, faking it. But have you ever tried doing a lot of physical exertion, like that prolonged fight we've just gone over, where they're running about and fighting, I mean, flung all over the place and fighting and running about, and then immediately going from 2,000 miles per hour, basically, to stopping and being so still that you could convince a 300-year-old red wizard that you're actually frozen in time. No heavy breathing, no blinking, no fast heartbeat, nothing like that. So frozen. I need to go over to this side because there's a curve going the other way. So, there we go. Just in case there's a car coming so that they can see me a little bit sooner. Yeah, that to me didn't work. And I mean, her perception score must be laughably low to fail that, even though she spotted the wild shape earlier and that was a fly. Anyway, okay, and then we see that this was all a distraction to get her to stand still so that Kira, while being invisible with her pendant, can put those magic cancelling out bracelet things from the arena on her so that her magic stops and then they can actually kill her. And that works. But whatever happens to us stay hidden. Like, they try to subvert expectations, like, oh no, everything's gone. Actually, this was the plan all along, and they did that, but it felt cheap, and it didn't make sense. Because when did they plan this? How? Like, it contradicts what he said previously. And how could they be sure that it would work out exactly this way? Anyway, so then I do like Kira being part of the team again. Because in the flashbacks we see that Kira is, or was, part of the team when they were Thieves. And so I like her being part of it again. But don't do it like this. Just, the way I would do it is I would give the initiative to Kira. Like, yes, she's got the pendant, she's been told to stay out of harm's way. She sees her father and the rest of her friends, her family, being attacked and they're not doing well and they're being defeated. So from her point of view, she looks around and she sees the pendants. And she has to overcome her fear and try to sneak up on Sofina. And just as Sofina is preparing to cast this big spell, she runs over, puts it on, and they help defeat her. That's how I would have done it. That would have actually, I don't have much time. You can tell me what you thought of it, but anyway. Almost done. Then we get to Holger's death. We're quickly gonna just pause and unpause, because if the battery runs out, I don't want to lose this clip. 1 second. Yes, then we get to Holger's death. So Holger's been impaled by something. It's a red wizard blade or something, and obviously Holger is going to be saved with the Tablet of Awakening. Like, this has been foreshadowed so many times in this film, and literally, almost literally spoken that it will happen like that. So, I mean, even if it wasn't, this is how this sort of film ends. You can't have the main character die in this sort of film, fun adventure film. No, that'd be sad. You can't have that. So then, okay, I'm going to skip over that bit. And then, so okay, she's there, she's dying. Okay. Kira's crying, they're all sad. And then she turns to Edgin and she says, promise me that you're going to take good care of our girl. Yeah, I get it. She is Kira's mother, not her biological mother. She's Kira's mother because she's the one Kira grew up with. Yeah, okay, I get it. I already got it before. Okay, sure. And then they get the return of the song where they both sing the song together as she's dying, and that is a touching scene. And it works because it was set up before, but I don't buy it. I just don't think that she's actually dying. And so they make it seem like, yes, it's sad because she's dying, and they have this moment together, but no, we all know at this point that she's going to come back. They're going to use the tablet on her and she's going to come back. So that kind of made it feel a little hollow. And then, so then she dies, and Kira goes over to her and hugs her, and she says, "No, no, I need you, I need you." That's a quote, by the way. And then again, yes, I get it. Kira, I know you don't need your biological mother who you've never known. I know that you need the woman who's actually been filling the role of your mother, and that she's the one who's going to be saved. I know, you don't have to tell me, Kira, I know. And then after that, so in the same scene, just after that, we get a flashback. So Edgin is looking at Holger's corpse, and we get a flashback back to the "you just need to let it go" dragonfly scene with his wife. Again, her saying basically, "just let me go," which was already painfully obvious when it happened the first time in the film, and now we get to see it again. And then, on top of that, just after that, the dragonfly literally shows up in the scene and sits down. And he looks at it as if the connection wasn't painfully obvious enough yet. And then no subversion happens. They do exactly what everybody predicts. The tablet gets used, Holger gets saved. And yeah, that whole thing. I've got two, because I don't like criticizing something without giving some way that I personally would improve it. So there are two ways that I would do it. The first way, which is my less favorite of the two, is do away with beating me over the head with it and then shoving it down my throat. Holger just died, Kira's crying, and then let the actor, Chris Pine, do his job. Like, don't cut away from your main actor's face as he's doing a death scene just for a flashback that we've already had. Let the actor do his job. It's not that difficult. Like, let the actor's face convey the emotion. Let the actor's face convey the emotion. And then after a bit of that, just have Edgin use the tablet. Don't have any more foreshadowing. It's just, she just died, the actor conveys the emotion of the scene, and he just uses the tablet. Holger wakes up, and just as she's about to say something, Edgin just says, "Not now." And they enjoy the moment of being together and him finally letting go of his wife. And yeah, it's as simple as that. But then, my favorite other option of how this could have been done, and this is actually something that a friend of mine said. Yeah. Monstrous poodles. Well, just normal poodles. Anyway, yeah, which my friend of mine suggested just after we'd watched the film together for the first time. Because I saw the film twice, like I said. So the first time I watched it with friends, afterwards, a friend of mine suggested this, which is Holger dies, and the camera kind of pans back and flies upwards, zooming out, and then slowly the battle scene transitions to a battle map on a table with minis of the characters and with dice laying around and with monster minis and all that sort of stuff, and character sheets and snacks on the table. It's the actual real-life gaming scene where they've been playing. I'm just gonna let the tractor pie by. So where they've been playing. 1 second, I'll resume once the tractor's gone by. 1 second. Okay, the tractor has passed. You can still see it back there. Right, so the camera passes out. You see the scene of the players sitting around the table, and they're either just silent, or one of them might even be crying a little bit or sobbing or something. Just a moment of somber sadness. They realize that this one character has been on all these adventures is now dead. And then Holger's player, so the actual real-life player who's been playing her this entire time, says, well, guess I'll make a new character. And then Edgin's player turns to the GM and says, GM, I used the tablet on Holger. And then as he says that, the camera zooms back into the world, into the battle map, into the world, onto Holger's face, her eyes snap open, and you continue from there. That would have been perfect. The end of the film actually showing it's a D&D game, that would have been perfect. Yeah. No foreshadowing. Just don't do foreshadowing. It doesn't work like how you're doing it. Just don't do it. And then the ending, the party at the Emerald Enclave with everybody together feels really good. Finally feels like they're a family. Forge getting his comeuppance is good at the hands of Xenk. And then, that was then, of course, the testament at another Absolution trial. And that's good, tying up loose ends at the end of a campaign or an adventure, that's good. And then Holger smiling at another halfling, showing she's actually moved on from Marlamin, is another nice touch, showing that there's been character development. I really enjoyed that. And then, yeah, it also shows that Edgin and her are not romantically involved after the adventure, which is a nice change of pace for these sorts of films. And then, again, red wax when Forge's plea is declined. Again, nice little thing to note. And then, of course, the bricked window with Jonathan, again, with a bricked up the window, and Forge just trying to mimic Edgin and Holger's escape doesn't work, is, of course, that did get a little chuckle out of me. And that's the end of the film. So, as we're getting close to Totnes, I want to just say that for as much criticism as I've given the film, I did enjoy it. And I give this criticism because I care about it. And because I just think it could have been so much better than it was. It was good in most respects, but it just could have been better. So if you've not seen the film yet, even though I gave the spoiler warning at the beginning, go watch the film. Go watch it, it deserves it. So with that, thank you all very much for watching this, and bye-bye.